begin the current Daf Masech Yoma Daf Ayin Ches. Begin 9 lines down at the top of the Yomah. We continue the discussion with the previous Daf regarding the halacha of Rechitza, which is one of the Inuyim on Yom Kippurim to qualify the halacha. Ashir is Kospas of Kazak and Cheskot to Anitim Daf Chaim. Pishem is joining us for today's Daf. Some of these discussing today's Daf are, as we mentioned, the Gemara continues to discuss the topic of this parak, the 5 Inuyim of Yom Kippur, specifically what types of washing are forbidden and what types of washing are permitted. Additionally, we discuss what types of shoes, which is one of the other Chamish Inuyim, again, which are forbidden and which are permitted. We discuss regarding young children in Yom Kippur and special dispensations for a newly married woman that they don't have certain other restrictions of Yom Kippur. And one of the key terms and concepts of today's daf are lahat b'chayris, the halacha that someone has to go ahead and specify and say that this firstborn animal has a mum and it's not going to be sacrificed as a carbon, and then you could be permitted to be used, especially this manazeh, and who qualifies to be able to be matat b'chayris. So on the previous stuff, we had mentioned if someone's going to on Yom Kippur greet someone greater than him, so the halacha we said, although you're not allowed to bathe on Yom Kippur, but that's okay, you're allowed to pass a water, you have to be concerned. And it's not only the Dvar Mitzvah, but we said it's even the Dvar Hashos, even discretionary activities such as Shemei Peiros. We said, even that Tzavar B'mayim B'nchleishin, the workers, they're allowed to pass by also, it's not considered a Rechitza Shel Tainik, and therefore it's not a problem by getting wet. Now, here the Gemara continues on this thing, it clarifies this halacha, and actually the first words that we're quoting over here, which are in parentheses, the Ger says, Teinach Yom Kippurim. So, okay, very good Yom Kippurim. The leka minol, where on Yom Kippurim you're not wearing shoes, so therefore there's no other problems that you might run into when you're walking through the water, except for rechitza, which we said in the previous step. Okay, that's okay. There's no problem by rechitza shel tainig. It's not doing it for pleasure. You're just trying to get from point A to point B. So therefore, let him walk through the water. Rashi says not to be goyrus these words, so tended to be kippurim, like we have it in parentheses. And as the Mefarshim explained, is because he was talking about a small little puddle, like a small little pond that you're walking through, and not with deep waters as we were speaking about regarding Yom Kippur. But be that as it may, the Gemara really has essentially a different question. But Shabbos, okay, so Yom Kippur there's no problem about walking through. You're not wearing shoes anyway. But Shabbos dika minol mai. But regarding Shabbos, are you allowed to walk through water through some type of a pond, or are we concerned that maybe the shoes are going to fall off your foot and you're going to come to carry it on Shabbos, which is a problem by Haitzah? So on that, Amar Nechemia Chassan de Benesi, he says that Anoch Haziti l'Rabami v'Rabasi, the Motu or Kuma de Maya, that they came to such a type of a puddle of water, v'Avru Derech Malbush, and they passed through wearing their shoes. So you see that there's no problem, but on Shabbos, walk you through water with the shoes. So the Gemara says, okay, Teinach Mindel, that's very good with shoes. Fine, you answered that question. But sandal, which you can't really tie and strap on so well on the foot like a shoe, what are you going to say? Walking through with those Crocs, walking through with those sandals, maybe we are concerned that it's going to fall off in the water and you're going to come to carry it. So on that, Amar Bechumi, he says, David Malba says, no, I saw him wearing sandals and they walked through the water even wearing it on his foot, and you see that you're not concerned for carrying even the sandal. However, Rabbi Shloimy says, sandal ketzilullah. He says, no, it's not true. A sandal, initially, one should not walk through the water on Shabbos because, yes, it could easily come off in the water, and we are chayish, you might carry them on Shabbos. The Gemara brings a story actually that illustrates this halacha that Rosh Galusa, who was the one in charge of all the Jews in the diaspora, he was Ikul Agrunya. He went to Agrunya, to the house of Rab Nosson, and he spent Shabbos over there. Now, Rav from Mekula Rabban and Osla Pirka, they all came to the drasha of Rosh Galusa on Shabbos. Ravina didn't come to the drasha. Now, Rav from Lafukil Ravina, Mitaiti Rosh Galusa. Meaning, Rafram was concerned of Rosh Galusa shouldn't be upset at Ravina, so he was trying to find a way to excuse why Ravina didn't come to the drasha. Somebody said to him, "My time lost a mala pirka." He said in front of Rosh Galusa, "Why didn't you come to the drasha? Rosh Galusa gave a drasha. You should have came." Amalei said, "Have a koivli karoi." He says, "No, my foot was hurting. I'm sorry, I couldn't come." So he said, "Baruch l'meisim misani. You should have worn shoes." So he says, "No, gaba de karahave. It was the top of the foot. That wouldn't help." because it would have hurt the foot on the top. It says, so you should have worn sandals which are wider, and that wouldn't hurt the foot. Amalei, he says, it says, yeah, but there was a puddle of water on the road that had to walk through. It says, okay, but you should have gone through wearing your sandals. That Amalei said to him, Rabashi says, doesn't the master know this is what Rabashi said? The sandal that you're not supposed to go ahead and wear this sandal walking through the water, and therefore that story illustrates that same halacha, that although you're allowed to walk through with shoes, but regarding sandal, even though actually the Teisha points out that he actually was the other man the Amar, but it could be that it was two Ravinas or he was just pushing him away, but be that as may, it illustrates that opinion that holds sandal like a chilulai. Now continuing with the halachas of Rechitza Yom Kippurim, which we're discussing in the previous stuff. So Tani Yehuda about Gregus says, "Asa leisha l'gabe tina b'Yom Kippurim." Now let's sit on mud on Yom Kippurim because, as Rashi tells us, the moisture of the mud is pleasurable and it's close to like bathing. You're getting that water, that moisture that you're getting from the mud. Now, Amr B'Shmuel Levi qualifies this halacha. He says, we're talking about, however, mud that is moist, that exudes water, and that's the type of mud that we're talking about. And moreover, Abaye qualifies even further. He says it has to be b'tefeach aminas latfiach. It has to be that wet that it could go ahead and then make something else wet. So if you sat on the mud, it not only makes you wet, but if you would touch something else, that would also become wet. That's the type of moisture that would be forbidden to sit on that type of a mud on Yom Kippur. Now, however, Rabbi Yehuda, he says it is mutal itztanin the peiros, allowed to cool yourself off with chilled fruits. And Rabbi Yehuda mitztanin b'karda, he would actually on Yom Kippur when they get hot, he would take squash and he would cool himself off with it. Rabbi mitztanin b'yinuka, he would cool himself off with a child. A child has this fresh, chilling. Rabbi mitztanin b'kasa dekaspa, he would cool himself down with a silver goblet. Now, however, Amar Papa, it says kasa dekaspa moli aser. But if it's a silver cup that's full with water, well, that would be forbidden, simply like Rash says, because the water might spill on him. But chasa shari. But if it's lacking, meaning if it's not full to the top, then you could go ahead and cool yourself off with the silver cup. Now the pachra, if it's earthenware, idvi di aser. Whether it's full or not full, they're both problematic. Mishum the mishcha shacham, because the earthenware actually pushes out the water that it absorbs even through the earthenware itself. So you're not allowed to use even if it's not full, because you're going to get some of the moisture through that earthenware. And the Ger says, Rav Ashi Omar, he disagrees. He says, even kasa de kaspa chaser nami asa, even the silver becher that's even not full to the top is also problematic. Mishum de mizdarev, because it's slippery and might fall out of his hand, and the water might still spill on him, and therefore even if it's not full, we're concerned for spilling, even if it's chaser. Now the Gemara brings a story. Zeira Bar Chama, who was Ishpezachanin, he was the host. The Rabami, Ravasi, Shimon Levi, Udukulu Rabban the Kisari Hava, from all the rabbis of Kisari. He was where all the rabbis came to stay by. So Amalei Rabbi Yosef Bedred Shimon Levi. Now he had hosted Shimon Levi, so he told Rabbi Yosef, the son of Shimon Levi, he says, Barodia, the son of the line, meaning the son of the Talmud Chacham, come, I'm going to tell you some of the beautiful things that your father had done. I'll teach you some halachas that I witnessed when your father was staying by me. He had a mitpachas, he had a cloth. He had this cloth on the Erev Yom Kippur. He would soak it in water. Then he would make it like a dried up towel, like a dried up cloth. And the next day he would wipe his face, his hands, and his feet. So he moistened it, he made it wet, but then he dried it up, and that's what he used for Yom Kippur. Obviously, we're saying that this is something that's not considered as rechitza, it's not a problem. So to Erev Tisha B'Av, he would soak it in water. And the next day he passed it over his eyes, which the Mefarshim do point out the differential between, as the Gemara is going to, but also regarding the next words. That's why the Vilna going to take the word v'chein. But here he would take it and he passed it over his eyes, which was a little moist from yesterday. So some take out or keep the word v'chein. There's something similar but different about Ki Asa Rabbi Bar Mari Amar. He said, Be'erev Tisha B'Av Mevi'in Lamed Pachas. He says, on Erev Tisha B'Av, they bring a person a cloth. The Shuras of a mine, he soaks it in water. And he puts it underneath his head when he goes to sleep. And the next day, so you see the difference over here from the previous interpretation. Here he's not saying you pass it over your eyes. Here he's not. He says that you clean your mouth and your hands and your feet with this. And Yom Kippurim they bring him a cloth. You soak it in water. And you dry it up, like a dried up towel. And the next day you pass it over your eyes. But be that as it may, this is what we're saying, that what has to be done is that he says on every Kippurim is when you have to dry it up. But by Erev Tisha B'Av, he didn't say that. He just said you put it underneath your pillow. So on that, Rabbi Yaakov, it says, Ifcha Amrit. You told us the opposite. You told us that by Tisha B'Av, you have to make it like dried up, and you have to try to make sure like you're drying it up. And every Kippurim, you did not tell us you have to make a Kil Neguvim, which is the opposite of what we just said. We just quoted Rabbi Bar Mari saying that by Erev Tisha B'Av, you bring him in pachas, he soaks it in water, and he leaves it dead. I'm sure it dries up till the next day, something, but you could use it to wipe your face and your hands and your feet. By every Kippurim, he was quoted as saying that you have to like dry it up, you have to make it like Kil Neguvim. So he told him, he said, but you told us the opposite. Which, why would it be more stringent by Tisha B'Av than Yom Kippurim? So the Teis Hashem says, as we say in general, that Divrei Seifim Tzrich and Chizik. So regarding rabbinics, regarding Tisha B'Av, which is not biblical law like Yom Kippurim, there you said that you have to actually squeeze it out, you have to try to dry it up a little bit more, and then you could use the whatever's left over on Tisha B'Av. But Yom Kippurim, you didn't tell us that, which is the opposite of what we just quoted as saying. And we asked on you, and we said, wait a second, if the version like we had heard from you is that on Erev Yom Kippurim you don't squeeze it out, it's still a little bit moist on Yom Kippurim, we asked you schita. We said it's going to be a problem on Tisha B'Av, no problem about schita, the only problem about chitza, but for Yom Kippurim, the version that you had said a different time, which is not like the one he's saying over here, the one he's saying over here is okay, but you had once told us the opposite, and we asked on you, and we said, how can you do that? On Yom Kippur, you're going to be squeezing it out. That's the problem about Malabin, about squeezing it out. That was what he was pointing out, that you had said a different time, the opposite, and we had asked on you, which here he's not saying that, he's saying the opposite over here. The Gemara continues, Amar Rav Menashe bar Tachlif, Amar Rav Amram, Amar Rabbi bar B'chama. Says, Shalu es Rebbe Lazar. They asked Rebbe Lazar, who Rashi points out that's Rebbe Lazar ben Pedas, and this is going on a Gemara in Sanhedrin of Him and Alf. Halacha is that a Chacham cannot be matter the Bechor as an individual, the firstborn animal, to see that it's blemished, only if he first had permission from the Nasi one time. So here, the question that we're asking was that if he's Zaken b'yeshiva, if he's someone that sits on the Sanhedrin, Tzarach Litul Rishus La'ad Bechor, says he has to take permission to permit firstborn animals to say, oh, it's blemished and you could use it, or maybe it doesn't have to. And Rashi says, why are we bringing this over here? Where's this coming into our Gemara? Because the Gemara wants to say, and another question they asked him was, can you go out with a sandal of reeds on Yom Kippurim? So that's the discussion we're having of wearing shoes. So therefore, first they open up with this question, but then it's going to lead into the second question, which was the one that we want for Harasugya. But the Gemara asked, on the question they asked Rabbi Lazar, well, what is the question? Why would we say one way or the other? So says the Gemara, the question is as follows. So Dav is that this halacha that you have to take permission, it was left for the household of the Nasi, so that they could be great, that they could have some type of distinguished position that you have to take permission. So the question is, so therefore you would say, even if he's on the Sanhedrin, still have to take permission. There's executive, there's different branches of the government. You have the executive and you have the judiciary, you have different things. This is what they get the rights. Maybe no. Even the Zakim Yeshiv B'Shiva, since he's someone, the elder who sits on the Sanhedrin, saying he obviously does not need permission, you're going to be Mata B'Chayris. So Amr Tzadik ben Chaluka Raglav Amr, and he said, Ani Re'isis Rabbi Yisrael ben Zimra. He says, I saw Rabbi Yisrael ben Zimra. He was an elder who was on the Sanhedrin. And he stood in front of the Zayda, the elder of this Nasi in our generation. So he's saying, go back a generation or two, says, someone on Sanhedrin went in front of the Zayda of this Nasi, and he took permission to permit B'cheres. So you see that even if you're a Zokum, Yeshiva, Yeshiva, even if on the Sanhedrin, you have to take permission to be Mata B'cheres. Which the Gemara says, no, Amalei Rabbi says, it's actually not what the story was. And therefore there wouldn't be any raya. The story was as follows. Rabbi ben Zimra, that you're saying that he was on the Sanhedrin and he took permission, not true. Kohen hoy, he was a Kohen. And this was the question they had. Halacha is halacha like Germeya Doma that he says, Hachoshed b'davar. If someone is suspect regarding something, meaning Kahanim, they're suspect regarding the blemishes of a firstborn animal, to permit it even though it's really forbidden, and actually even suspect even inflict a blemish. Why? Because a firstborn animal in today's times has no recourse, has no takana, unless it has a blemish, because you can't bring it as a carbon. So you just have to wait till it develops a blemish. So therefore, by a kohen, if he's going to be engaged with it from when you give it to him, he's going to be responsible to protect it and to feed it. So therefore we suspect that gemacht a blemish, and that's it, I could use it now. It's not kodesh anymore. Which therefore Reb Meir says that if someone is suspect regarding something, like for example the kohen regarding the b'char, which Machlekes Reb Meir, Rabbanan and Shimon is in b'char stuff on him and Al, so Reb Meir says, look, don't you're not allowed to educate such a court case, you're not testify. So therefore a kohen cannot be a mata b'chayris because we suspect him. That he says, no, he is a believer regarding his friend. Rabbi Shimon says, yes, you're right, we do suspect Kahana, but that's only regarding for themselves. But for someone else, which he doesn't have any personal vested interest, because it's going to some other person, some other kind, then he is believed. So therefore, that was the question that he had asked, this Rabbi Yisrael Zimra. And he ruled that what? That a kohen could rule or testify regarding someone else's b'char, because it's not going to be for his own self. For himself, you can't, because he's going to be biased, because it's the only way he could use the b'char. But therefore, there's no raya regarding the question you had asked about Zakum Yeshiva, and you bring a raya from Yisrael Zimra, when they told Yisrael Zimra that he needs permission, meaning that he's not allowed to do it, wasn't because of that he was a Zakum Yeshiva. It was saying that you're only allowed to do it for someone else because you're a kohen, but for yourself you can't. But it had nothing to do with the element about regarding if he's a Yeshiva, that he's on the Sanhedrin or not. Okay, that was that discussion. But then then they asked in front of Rabbi Lazar another question, which is why we brought in this whole narrative of asking questions to Rabbi Lazar, because this is what's in our sugya. They asked him, "How losses per sandal shal as we continue to the base of sham? What's halacha? Can you make with shoes of a type of a gummi, of cork or rush, these other type of materials? Are you allowed to go out with these shoes b'yom kippur and yom kippur?" So Rabbi Yitzchak ben Nachmani al Ragla v'Amar. So Rabbi Yitzchak ben Nachmani got up on his feet and he said, "Ani," again a type of testimony about what he saw. Another Yisrael Rabbi Shimon Levi. Sheyatsa b'sandal shasham yom kippur. Yeah, he wore these types of shoes of cork on Yom Kippur. And Vaminale, and I said to him, "But tainis tzibur mai. What's halacha regarding which type of tainis tzibur?" So as Rashi says, he would make gezeris on when it didn't rain, as the Mishnah teaches in times of your days and days, where you're not allowed to wear shoes. So what's the halacha? As would be same thing over here, although it's not Yom Kippur, it's rabbinic, but again, like we said, that rabbinic law sometimes can be more stringent than biblical. He says, and could you, even on the tainis tzibur for the rain, are you allowed to wear these types of shoes? Amalei says yes, it doesn't make a difference. You're allowed to wear these shoes. They're not considered shoes if they're made out of other materials that are not made out of leather. One could wear them. Now, Amar Rabbi Achana, he says, as Rabbi Lazar did in Ninveh, it says the inverse story. It says, I saw someone else walking out with a sandal of sham, of this rush, of this cork on tainis tzibur. But I said to him, what's halacha in Yom Kippur? You allowed to wear these shoes too? Amalei says, yeah, no difference. Because again, they're not considered as a minal as shoes. Rabbi Huda, nothing but the hitne, he would go out with also a type of sham, type of rush, these types of gummi, and Abaye nothing but a hutzi. He would go out with a shoe of palm fronds, like little branches. Rabbi nothing but the yavle, he went out with a type of shoe made out of grass. Rabbi Rav Huna, Karach Sudra Akar Benafik. He would wrap a cloth around his foot and he would walk out like that. Again, these are all different types of, so to speak, shoes that are not shoes that you're allowed to wear on Yom Kippur and the Tainis Sibur. Now, however, on all these opinions, Masav Romi Bacham, he asks from a Mishnah Masechta Shabbos. Mishnah says, Hakiteya, if you have an amputee, someone that is missing his leg, so he's allowed to go out on Shabbos with his wooden prosthetic foot. That's the Brit Meir. Rabbi says no, it's forbidden. Why? As Rashi explained, because he holds it's not a shoe, because it's not what most people wear, and therefore it's like carrying in Rosh Hashanah. So you're not allowed to walk out with this prosthetic on Shabbos. Now, B'Tanei Allah, we learned on that Mishnah of Brisa that said B'Shavin, but they both agree that Sha'asa Latzis B'Yom Kippur. Although it's machlokes, you're allowed to wear this kav on Shabbos, but they both agree that you're not allowed to go out with it on Yom Kippur. So obviously you see that although according to Rabbi Yosi, a kav, this prosthetic wooden foot, is not a minal, and that's why actually you're not allowed to wear on Shabbos, because it's not a shoe. Because if it was a shoe, wearing a shoe is not carrying on Shabbos, it's a shoe, it's Derech Malbush. So you see, a little bit is not a shoe, even so, he held that it's also to wear in Yom Kippurim. So you see, it's not only a minal that you can't wear in Yom Kippurim, so then why Shalsham, of all these grass, how come all those things you let wear in Yom Kippurim? I thought it doesn't have to be a minal. You're just not allowed to wear something that's protecting your feet. So that Abaye says, no, Hasam over there, that it was forbidden on Yom Kippurim, is because the Isbek Kesisim is because that there were these small little pieces of fabric which make it easy to put his stump of his thigh on top of that prosthetic wooden shoe. And the problem why is Mishum Tainik. Not because it's because any type of minal, even if it's not a minal, is forbidden. No, you're allowed to wear a shoe made out of cork. You're allowed to wear these synthetic materials. You're allowed to wear all these other things. So why did everyone agree in that halacha that Shal Yom Kippurim is going to be Asur? That's for a different reason, because of tainik, not because of the fact that it's a shoe. Why is it tainik? So why is it different than the other shoes? Because they would put in some fabric inside. It was comfy. You have this nice soft little fabric inside. That the tainik was forbidden. And that's what Rava says. What? I don't understand. V'ilav manahu. You tell me that if it's not a kli, tell me it's not a shoe, it's not a vessel. Kesisin mashvele mana. So what? These piece of fabric suddenly make it into a kli? Let's say to be makabel tumah. How is that happening? How is it becoming like a kli through putting in the piece of fabric? Well, moreover, he has a more basic question. It says, "Kol tiny blood minalhu." I don't understand. Any pleasure, let's say, that's not from a shoe. Is that forbidden in Yom Kippur? You tell me not allowed to wear this wooden shoe. You're right. Not because it's a shoe. And not only that, it's not even like because of it like a synthetic shoe, it's simply because of tiny. So any type of tiny in the is forbidden. But the Rabbi wouldn't have a karach suja, carbonafik, but he would wrap a kerchief around his foot and he would go out. And that's oinig. It's definitely pleasurable that you're not walking on rocks or whatever this and that. So, and you see that's not forbidden. But moreover, he says, Melikani Sefer. The fact that it says there at the end of that brisa, it says, Im yesh lebeis kibul kesisim. If it has a place to receive these fabrics, meaning in the wooden shoe in this kav of the kiteya, then tameh. Then this is something that's going to be makabel tumah because it's not pshudik kliyetz anymore. It's not just a smooth like a lot of these the wooden shoes for the people that were missing feet. It was just a stump. No, if it has a place where you has a concave to put in fabric, that's going to be makabel tumah. So says Rabbi Machlal, the inference is the reisha that the first halacha that we said that both agree that it's forbidden to go with on Yom Kippurim. The lavid is like sisna skin. It's not the one where there is fabric that can be put over there. So therefore, that's not like Abaya who is saying that that's because there's kesisin and it's forbidden because of timing. So then we're back to the question. So then why is it forbidden on Yom Kippurim? Obviously, because you don't even need a minal, even if it's not a regular shoe. You see, you're not allowed to have anything on protecting the foot in Yom Kippur. So back to the question, how do we understand all those who said shalsham and of cork is permitted? You see that no, anything that protects the foot is like a shoe, even if it's not a shoe, and it's forbidden on Yom Kippurim. So how are they saying that wearing all these other materials are permitted? So Elam Rabbi, the Rabbi disagrees with Rabbi, and he qualifies like this. He says, the truth is, the Kul Elma Minol, everyone agrees that actually the kav, this prosthetic of the amputee, is considered as a shoe. So therefore on Yom Kippurim, you're right, that wooden shoe is going to be forbidden. But that of hitni and hutzah, all those other materials of rush and cork and all those other things, those are not considered as a shoe. It's only specifically the wooden shoe that's considered as a minnow. Now, so then, wait a second, if everyone agrees it's a shoe, and that's why everyone agrees you cannot wear it, like the Brisa said, so what's shot in the Mishnah that said there's a machlekes if you wear it on Shabbos or not? If it's a shoe, so of course you should be able to wear the shoe. We had originally interpreted that the machlekes was if it's a shoe or not. And then we said, so I don't understand, so why Yom Kippurim does everyone agree, including Rabbi Yisrael, it's going to be forbidden? You see, even if it's not a minnow, Rabbi Yisrael is going to be forbidden, everybody has the question, no, it says everyone agrees it's a minnow. It's a shoe. That's Yom Kippurim, you can't wear it, you're not wear shoes. So then, wait a second, what's the machlekes regarding Shabbos then? Everyone agrees you're not wear shoes on Shabbos. No, the Shabbos Bapligi, the machlekes was that Marsa Rabbi Yisrael held, Gezrina the Mishtamit was Lasud Alaramas. It's a prosthetic. It's not something that's you don't, your foot doesn't go into it. It's just on your stump. So maybe it's gonna fall out and you're gonna come to carry a daladamis. That's why he held the Taz on Shabbos. Umar Sabalagers in Ray held that no, we don't make such a gezerah. But again, therefore it's not a question from the kab of the kiteya, which is from wood, in contrast to the other ones of hutzah and all those palm fronds and whatever, because those are not minal and that is a minal. And therefore, yes, the halacha is that we're allowed to wear on Yom Kippurim these other types of shoes that are made of other things, as long as not made out of something that's you normally use as a shoe. Now the Gemara continues now with the halachas that we were discussing in the previous daf regarding as it applies to children. Children are permitted in all the things we learned in the Mishnah: eating, drinking, bathing, anointing. Chutz, menelas hasan. One of them is permitted is wearing shoes. Says the Gemara, it's forbidden is wearing shoes. Says the Gemara, why is wearing shoes different? Obviously, because the Amri Inshi Abdila, because they're going to say that, the adults made it for them, so it gives the appearance of wrongdoing, and the Torah moreover warns that the adults have to be careful not to do anything wrong for the young children. You're not allowed to actively create a child to do a dvar isser, as the Gemara says in Yoma Daf, it says, and it's pronounced leisachilum, which is what's called lahazig del malakitanim. This is a few times in the Torah, which the Gemara discussed, and Yom is why you need them all, to tell you that an adult not allowed to cause a young child to do an isser. So obviously the reason why you're saying that the child cannot wear shoes is because if he's wearing shoes, who tied the shoelaces? It's the adult that obviously did it. And an adult not cause a child to do an isser. So if that's the case, so hanach nami. So what's with being bathed or being smeared up with the all that cream they wear, the Johnson, some good smell, freshing, whatever. I mean, they can say people did it. So how is a baby allowed to? How is a young child allowed to have those things? Obviously, the adult did that too. So how is that permitted on Yom Kippurim? Says the Gemara, no. Rechitza the sicha ema me'etma. They're going to say that the baby had it done, the young child had it done from before Yom Kippurim. So though he still smells good, maybe it didn't get in the mud yet. So, but whereas. So says the Gemara, so why didn't you say this in regarding the shoes? Maybe the parent tied the shoes every Yom Kippurim. Says the Gemara, no, sandals are not possible that they were done from before Yom Kippur, meaning that the child would have slept in their shoes all night long on their feet, because the Amar Shmuel says, Haiman de boy lemitim time de misusu. Whoever wants to taste the taste of death, l'sayim mesani v'legani. Let him put on the shoes and go to sleep. As we know, a person shouldn't be wearing his shoes when he's sleeping, and therefore it's not possible. Therefore, everyone's going to know if they see the child walking with shoes in Yom Kippurim that it must have been the adult put on Yom Kippurim, and that we're not allowed to do because of lahazik gedil mal gitan. But regarding other things, people might say it was from before. But the Gemara says, I understand. You told me that if someone's coming to ask the question and say, hey, could I bathe my child? And you're going to say yes, besides putting on shoes. But that guy himself knows that he's doing it today. So forget about it. It's not because it's not obvious or not. How are you allowed to go ahead and have him do something that you said, lahazik magitan, to do a dvar isser for the child that's forbidden to be done? You're right, you don't have to stop the child. But how are you allowed to go ahead and actively do it to go ahead and bathe or or anoint this child? So El Rabbi, the Gemara actually has an answer that's a very halachically important concept in the laws of chinuch, where although we're talking about a child that's a devar chinuch and you have to stop him from doing an isser, and you're telling him you're allowed to do all these things, but hanuch, these things like shoes, that's not important for the development of the growth of the child. It's a glazer rabban. That's rabban with geyser. Yeah, a child also should not be wearing shoes. But hanach to the visayhu, but eating, drinking, bathing, which that's necessary for the development of a child, lagaz rabban and rabban not geyser. That is actually halacha, and halacha of chinuch. We use this halacha very much so, and you also see psychologically the developmental model that children have to develop at a certain stage, and one has to take that into consideration in how you treat the child. Because the Abai actually says, he says, my mother told me, which actually is well known, it wasn't his mother. His mother passed away when he was a baby, but it was his nurse. The development of a child is ma'ichamimi, is warm water to bathe in, umishcha, and oil to anoint and smear him. So this is important. When you do this for the baby, is actually helping the child develop. Now, and again, the younger you are, it's more physical, then it gets more emotional, then it gets more spiritual. So Gadol Purta, the child gets a little bit older, is Be'asa B'Kutcha. It's some eggs with kutach that, again, that's necessary for the child's health. Gadol Purta, the child gets a little bit older, is Taburi Money. This is a funny one, but it's actually a real one, is actually breaking vessels. Is that actually, what you have to do is, you have to leave him some vessels to break, and to get his heart's content, which there are many parents who don't lock every cabinet with a child lock, because it's important for the development of a child to be curious, to explore, and actually break some stuff. And that's what Abai is saying, this is necessary. And again, this is even halacha, this is hashkafa, but even halacha, like we're saying, that the reason why we have them eat and all these things in Yom Kippur is because if it's necessary for the development of a child, we don't do chinuch for the child. If it's shoes he doesn't need, so you can take it off. But let's say going to sleep early, let's say he's going to miss a havdalah, this and that. For the health of the child, you don't do the mitzvah of chinuch. As the Gemara says, Kihad de Rabba, this last one is very, Rabba, Zavan mani gezizi de fachra lebnei. He would buy these like more, he would go to the flea market probably, and he'd get these like cracked earthenware vessels for very cheap for his kids. And they would break it. Right? Because kids need to break stuff. And it's part of roughhousing and all these, this is part of the development of a child. So he knew, they had insight. Not like those families that you can't walk into the house from the front door, even the side door with the shoes on, there's mud, you get screamed at by the mother that if you do this one more time, the children need to do this. It's important for the development. And again, that's why the Gemara says that for the shoes, that we said that they're forbidden to do because it's not necessary for the development of the child, but all the other things is necessary. The kid needs to eat and to drink and to bathe and all those different things. Therefore, the Rabbanu were not geyser the halacha of chinuch on the child for those things. Then the halacha of the Mishnah that said hamelech v'hakalo yichrotzas b'nei. We said an exception to the law, at least according to the Tanna Kama, was we said the king and the bride they could wash their faces. So on that says the kala we had said was within the first 30 days. So it says the Gemara, who's the Tana of the Mishnah? So the Gemara, the Tana in the Brisa, Hamelech v'Akala. Tana Kama in this Brisa says lo yichrotzas b'nei, not wash their face because they're no different than anyone else, which it's a brachitza on Yom Kippur. It says Hamelech v'Akala yichrotzas b'nei. No, the king and the bride could wash their face. Hachaya. Now the Tanna Kama says the woman who gave birth, like Tinal Sassan, will not wear shoes. But again, it says the woman who gave birth could wear the shoes. Those opinions are like the Tanna Kama of our Mishnah, who had someone else in our Mishnah disagree with him. But my time, what's the reason for these halachas? So it says Melech, Mishum said the Melech is because like it says the buzzing in Shai. Melech b'yafya, the king in his beauty, your eyes should see. So he has to be beautiful, therefore he has to wash his face. And again, it's not because of tainik. The whole rechitza, as we had mentioned in the previous stuff, is only prohibition of pleasure. Here he's doing it because he has to look beautiful. And kalamaitam, what's the reason for the bride? Is kaddish leitaskana al bailas, that she should not be disgraced on her husband, who just got married, and therefore she has to go ahead and wash her face. Now, Amalei Rav or Rechitza says kalat kama. How long is she considered quote unquote a bride? So Amalei said Tim Ketanya, like we learned in the Brisa. which this Bryce is talking about, if let's say they had already slaughtered the meat, they already poured the wine, and the whole chasna is set up, and lo yaleinu, the father of the chasna, or the mother of the bride, they pass away. So what do? You take the dead father or mother and you put them into a side room, and you take the chasna kala to the chuppah, and then they're intimate, and then you bury the parent, and this is where the Brisa continues and says, "In ein moinin tachshit minakala," although we know that for avelis you're not supposed to wear jewelry, but from the bride you don't hold back her wearing jewelry for kol shleishim yom, for all 30 days from when they get married. But one thing you see from this Brisa is that for 30 days is when she's considered kala, that she has to be beautiful for her husband. And the halacha of hachai tinel sasandal, why does the woman who gave birth wear shoes? So that's mishum tzina. That's because of the cold. She's very delicate. She's considered as a chayla for 30 days after birth, and therefore she's allowed to wear shoes. Similarly, Amar Shmuel, he says that imachmas sakonas akr, if a person's wearing shoes because he's going in a place where you have to be concerned for scorpions, where there's a danger, so mutter, so then every person is allowed to wear shoes, because obviously sakonas nefashos take precedence over the isser of neilas hasambu. Thank you for any time for hosting us.